Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Two Doomed Men podcast, the greatest, ready? The greatest podcast in the history of the country, perhaps even the world by far. I don't think anyone comes close.
What's up, Doom Nation, and welcome back. You are listening to the Two Doom Men podcast. As always, it's Skaggs and yours truly, the captain. And we have a very special guest returning. Skaggs, why don't you introduce our friend to everyone?
Yeah, returning for the third time on the Two Doom Men podcast. It is Ken W. Good from the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. Ken, thank you for coming back to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's there's a lot going on, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for reaching out to us. We really appreciate it.
It's cool and it's funny, kind of, to also think about how things have changed since the last time we spoke. The first time we spoke, we kind of talked a little bit about bail reform and just the absolute chaos and insanity that was going on under the Biden years. That was, I think, in 2022. Then we had you on 2023. They were trying to outlaw, the Second Amendment in New Mexico. I remember we talked about. And now here we are. Things have changed. But before we kind of get into where we're at today, why don't you kind of tell everybody just a little reminder what it is you do, who you are, and all that good stuff, where they can find you.
Well, I'm an attorney. I'm in Texas, and I specialize in bail law. So I travel the state of Texas, which is a very big state, representing bondsmen, trying to get issues resolved, get licensing issues and conflicts resolved. And as a result of all this, I became, or I decided to become very knowledgeable on these bail reform issues across the country. I've written numerous articles since over the times that we've talked. I think I have a new article coming out this coming Friday on Law 360. And so it's been kind of a wild ride to see kind of the way bail reform, the discussions have progressed over the time that we've known each other, from just setting up of here's what they're trying to do to here's how it's completely not working to now here we are with almost a recognition of we need to go back to what works, and the utter the realization that we've been lied to for the last 4 years, I think is what the way I would say it.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'd say even from my perspective, kind of as more of a libertarian, I'm open to the idea of fixing kind of the bail process and bail reform. But what was done the past couple of years was just chaos.
Madness.
There should be bail reform for monotonous, dumb things that occur. I don't know. You get in a bar fight with your friends and everybody shakes hands at the end of the day and walks away. Does everybody necessarily need to go to prison and, not be able to get out or something like that? Maybe.
Well, but bail reform is just getting you to go to court. I mean, first-time offenders, one thing that are have deep ties to the community, but I mean, people with long criminal histories,
Right.
we're treating them like first-time offenders a lot of time, and
Violent individuals.
yes, and that's where we're getting all this trouble. And I think really, if you think about it, I think we would all agree that the Democrat Party has outsourced their policy on either criminal justice reform, bail reform, and they've outsourced it to advocates who are not looking for what's best for public safety. They're looking for what's best for their advocacy group that will continue the money to be coming in. And I think the lesson from the last 4 years is when you outsource your policy on criminal justice reform or bail reform to these advocacy groups, they will take advantage of you because they're only looking after themselves. They're not looking after public safety.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you've seen too that like sometimes the biggest victims of that are people in like the inner city as well. I remember.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's, and I did not know this until I learned it probably during the last 6 months. But, I keep saying we're repeating the same mistakes we made in the 60s where we felt safe and we were more forgiving, then crime started going up. But, the people that were the first in the 60s to say, wait, this is going the wrong way were pastors in the inner cities because they saw the impact to their minority communities, especially Black men. And so they were the first to stand up and say, we're going the wrong way. We've got to change course. And I think the same thing's happening this time. What slowed it down is we're finding out now is all this U.S. aid money being given to all these groups that we didn't even know about. And so, I always say, why didn't we have this backlash 2 years ago? Now we know why. Yeah.
All those protests were paid for and funded by, subsidiaries of USAID and stuff. It's wild. So we do have a couple of questions lined up for you. And one that I wanted to get into is now that Trump's back in power and we, the people, have basically given this, big mandate to the government of how we want things to be done and the changes that we're looking for. What's some of the challenges that are the pro criminal justice reform people are going to face to go back to a system that works? Because right now anything that Trump does or anything that he's involved in is obviously going to be met with a level of insanity, and just you have to choose the opposite thing because he's the bad guy. So what's some of the challenges that are going to be going forward to fix this system?
I think okay, so let's look back during Trump's first term when he was elected. He took office in January, and there was so much resistance to him. But I read a couple of articles that said at the time, oh, by December, the backlash will have waned and they will recognize him as president. Well, that never happened. I mean, he was impeached twice. If he'd have been reelected and had 2 contiguous terms, he would have probably been impeached a third time because he would have had a Democrat Senate and a Democrat House. And so he would have probably been an ineffectual president, somebody below, middle of the range. Now, because of the way it happened and because of the manipulation of the system and the backlash, here he is with an overwhelming majority of the vote. I mean, he got the popular vote. Nobody would have thought he would have done that. And he also has, the House and the Senate. So he has control of Congress for at least 2 years until we have an election, and we'll see what happens in 2 years. So I think right now it's going to be even worse. I mean, we're having a de facto State of the Union tonight, and you're hearing that one party's going to bring eggs, and they're going to be noisemakers, and every time they say something that he says something they disagree with, or they have some lines, they're just going to get up and walk out. Well, I mean, if you're going to play Trump's game, you got to have Trump's intelligence, because Trump will run. I mean, I've decided that he's probably one of the smartest men that's ever been president. I mean, he plays chess better than anybody. And, the first time he was president, he was playing the part of a politician, which he wasn't comfortable
He was being nice. Yeah.
Now he's playing the part of a billionaire taking over a bankrupt company, which is exactly what he's used to doing, and that's the way he's treating the United States, and that's the reason why he's going so fast. So I don't. My prediction is the Democrats will not learn the lessons of the first Trump presidency. I mean, you can look at it when they elected their new DNC chair and their board
and vice chair David Hogg.
Oh, and the complete circus that took place, and I would say they have not learned any lesson. And I've been saying this for a while. The Democrats have to lose probably 2 elections in a row before they're going to right their ship, because right now their explanation is they just weren't left enough. If they would just stay true to the left, they would have won. And and Harris moderated 6 weeks before the election. She became a middle of the road person, so they're going to blame that. And if you think about it, worse, because of the manipulation, the coalition of Obama's coalition of Wall Street and the progressives that have been, Wall Street's been paying for the elections and the progressives have left them alone. That coalition has been completely destroyed. And so that coalition has manipulated the process. That's what gave us Hillary Clinton. That's what gave us Biden, and now giving us Harris. That coalition's dead. They will not nominate anyone except from the progressive wing, the far left wing of the party. And as a result, Wall Street won't be in for that. They won't pay for that campaign. So they're going to have to find a new winning combination, a new group of supporters to win, and they're going to be in the woods for a while. Because if when Hillary ran, if it had been the guy from Vermont,
Bernie,
if it had been Bernie Sanders, they would not have won. It wouldn't even been close. And so, when you put up a moderate or a Republican, any Republican against a far left candidate, I think I know what the election result's going to be. Well, we're fixing to find out, I think, in the next election, because the coalition that's been moderating the party is dead.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I feel like a lot of people, we kind of talked about that a little bit last week, that is the Democrat Party going to fix itself at all or right the ship at all? It's interesting that you mentioned that. I know we talked a little bit the first time we had John about New York City. I think that you did see there a little bit, things got so bad that Mayor Adams did kind of come back to reality and started making a lot of sense. Do we believe him 100% that it's genuine and honest? I don't know. That remains to be seen for everybody.
I think Adams is a good example of, if you start getting sense, coming back to reality and start writing your path, you get attacked. And so
yes,
when he started doing that is when they filed criminal charges on him. I mean, and that was not a lesson to him. That was a message to all the other Democrats in power. Don't do this. And I think that message was well received. And so I think that fight is a bigger fight than we realize.
Let's go down the rabbit hole here for a minute. Why do you think they do that, right? Because, look, I don't agree with Mayor Adams on probably 9 out of 10 things, but he did start saying one thing I agree with. They could not let that stand. And it seemed like they wanted to ruin his career, just like you said. If you step out of line whatsoever on something that should be a common sense issue. Like, we can't just have Mad Max in the streets of New York City and an unlimited supply of migrants coming in here and living off of welfare. Why do you think they're so invested in this sort of turn society upside down kind of policy?
Well, okay, so let's give them a good intent. I mean, I can give out a bunch of reasons, but let's start with giving them a good intent. The largest single budget item in a county is law enforcement. So if they can discredit law enforcement and they can say, hey, everybody wants to get their case resolved, we can do this for 2/3 of the money that we're currently spending. Well, okay, let's free up the budget. Let's cut the budget of law enforcement and let's defund the police. What are we going to do with that money? We're going to put it in social programs. And that's exactly what's happened. And when you bring in people, immigrants, and you have to provide them services, you have to, again, get that money from somewhere. The biggest single budget item is law enforcement. So that's kind of a a forced reduction in budget because you only have so much money. So I think a lot of this, if you want to give them a good intent, it's to invest more money in social programs. If you want to give them a bad intent, it's because they're stupid. and they swallowed the Kool-Aid, and they believe their own rhetoric, which had never been true. And the people driving this want chaos.
Yeah, I don't see the party getting better until common sense re-enters the picture. Yeah.
It just reminds me of the question, the meme. It's a question being asked to Dr. Ron Paul. It's like, are they stupid or are they evil? And he just says yes.
Well,
yes.
someone gave me good advice one time. Never assume evil intent when stupid intent is enough to explain the actions.
Yeah, I agree with that in general. I think
just as many problems.
Yeah. I think at a certain point, though, too many coincidences lead me to believe that perhaps a big portion of it is stupid people. I actually do think that's true. We talked before about USAID, how it was funding a lot of these protests. It's funding the protests, but there are a lot of like true believers who go to these things, and it's
but the lesson
organizes it.
I mean, I think the lesson from the USAID is the poison to our whole government, from starting with Obama, then going forward through Biden. I mean, how they learned how to fund these left-wing causes through USAID. I would say the purpose of USAID was no longer to help to help the cause of the U.S. It was to help the progressive cause, no matter where it was. And I mean, the funds that were being given to these groups that were just left-wing groups is just incredible. I mean, and I think their purpose changed starting with Obama and grew ever since then. And I think with Biden, I think if you really want to analyze what happened to him, he learned from Hillary when she was no longer going to be in office. She kind of, paid to play. Well, he really took that off and ran with it. All the stuff that we hear about him was, when he was no longer going to run for president, he was vice president. And then when Hillary lost and suddenly he was a viable option, well, all these things have happened. And so he was the moderate, had the best chance of winning, so they looked the other way. But he really learned from his predecessors on this pay-to-play scheme or pay-to-play scheme and has run with it. Now, this correction that we're going into has going back to we know what works, has a chance, an opportunity for the Republicans to snowball. Because if it works like it always has in the past, and look how well it's worked at the border, how quickly we've changed the border to having so few people come across, we're going to have a dichotomy, a comparison of some of our inner cities and in Democrat strongholds versus the safety of the rest of the country. And that has the potential for snowballing some elections for a period of time.
Yeah, it's definitely something that they can run on, and a proven track record of, look, this is normal. This is what we get. My only concern, and I don't want to go on like another tangent and bring up BLM or anything like that. I just feel like once we start getting on this path, it's so easy to corrupt it and get off and maybe stage a false flag or something. I guess there's not as much funding to do it as much anymore. The only thing I'm just worried about is, we start doing what works and then somebody's going to fight back against it. And then some cop gets wrapped up in the middle of it, You
can already see the return of, the left to, minorities are not being treated fairly. They're the ones that are going to suffer the most. And it just contrary to the facts. I mean, they're just going back to speaking about emotion. And so they're going to go back to that as quickly as possible. And, you have to remember that an election is a coalition. So you've got the true believers and you've got the people in the middle that are going, that sounds right. And right now they're rejecting that and they're going with the right or center right. And so it wouldn't take much for, them turning. All they got to do is turn off the middle and the middle turns to the left again and they're back in power. That's what they're thinking right now. What they're trying to do is kind of like an election. We've always heard in a presidential election, the summer before, you always want to spend your money to paint the picture of your opponent so he can't before he painted himself. That's what we're in right now. We're in this period where they want to paint a picture of Trump and his policies and try to get those to stick. And they're trying anything in the world to get it to stick. before the good parts stick and people start realizing Trump's only trying to do what he thinks is best for the country. Right now, they're using fear of the tariffs, fear of Ukraine, and so they're painting this picture of Trump's an ego. He doesn't know what he's doing. I kind of think Trump knows exactly what he's doing.
I always find that so funny that like these left-wing progressives all of a sudden become like pure market, pure free market libertarians when it comes to tariffs. Like I don't know, like I don't know, some AOC would actually care about tariffs, or something like that. Doesn't like line up consistently as per her ideology is what it's supposed to be. But all of a sudden she just decides to start caring. I was thinking about that though. Like summer's on its way. I don't know. Like, is it going to be another summer of protests, or did them?
I don't think so.
Them taking a swing at USAID right out of the bat really put it on the back foot.
I think the egg issue is a good example of the short-sightedness of the party in opposition. Because so how did we get here? We had over 1 million chickens had to be killed because of
1.3 million, I believe,
of the bird flu. And so how long does it take to replace that? A chick to laying eggs is 6 months. Well, I mean, we're 4 weeks away before we start seeing that the chicks start reaching that egg.
As a guy who has chickens,
and so somewhere in the middle of April, this is going to start getting resolved. So it's a very short issue for them to lop onto. We're bringing egg cartons to the pseudo State of the Union tonight. And so I think that's short-sighted on their part, because that's going to be resolved pretty quickly because of the life expectancy, or the expectancy from raising to getting a chick to start laying eggs is 6 months, and we're almost there. So
I wouldn't put it past them to, as egg prices go down, them just blatantly lie that egg prices are actually going up.
Yeah, well, they've been lying the whole time. Think about crime. They were, crime was increased for 40%, and then it went down 20%. And they're like, crime's down, time's down. No, it's still up 20%. And in our urban cities where y'all are doing these terrible, terrible policies, it's still up, and y'all are just ignoring it. And you're like, they're, with atoms, they're doing this purity check. If you don't agree with them, you get attacked. And I was talking to somebody recently, and they were talking about, the governor of California probably ruined his chances at a national election because of the fires in California. And they were saying, well, they don't have a deep bench. And I'm like, well, he wasn't a deep bench. And how deep of a bench do they need to bring their next pretty boy who is the
their next yes man. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take much. I mean, any of the three of us could do that. We're all pretty boys.
There you go. Yeah, you get more hair than me nowadays. I gotta give you that. Yeah, right. I was just, that's a good point, right? I could see, like, if Newsom were to run for president, I mean, look what a layup it is to run against him. You just run ad after ad about how under his leadership, all of California literally burnt down to the ground. Is this what you want for America? Yeah,
I know.
They didn't even have water. They are a coastal state, and they had no water.
But I think he still runs for president. I mean, because he has no other choice. He's term limited on governor to California. So what else can he do? The big question is Harris. Is Harris going to run for governor of California? That's a retreat, but she's being encouraged to do that.
This would be a good litmus test to see if the left has actually learned anything come 2028, and they run somebody like Newsom. You know what I mean? Like, because nobody's really, maybe some people will forget in 4 years of what he will do, but the two do men and Ken Good will not have forgotten what he's done.
I mean, I don't think California's learned anything. They've proposed a bill.
No, I don't think they would have.
In the last few weeks where they're taking away the defense that you're defending your house. When somebody breaks in, you can't shoot them. And if you do, you can be arrested instead. I mean, it's like crazy. You have to show that you have no other option. No, help them pack up all your stuff and put it in their pickup. That's what they want to make you have to do, because it's really just transferring wealth to the poor. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is. So Trump is president now, though, and now he's not like in charge theoretically of every single police force in the country. There is going to be some differences between what Texas does and what New York does, but in general, Captain and I have really focused so far since he became president kind of on the migrant crisis, on some of the international news happening, the wars and things like that, and Epstein and whatnot. But we haven't really focused so far on his plans for just crime in general, outside of the migrant stuff. What are like the key things that he's proposing that you think are going to work? And
well, I think in our inner cities, he has declared a war on gangs and cartels. He has declared them terrorist groups, so that opens up resources to be used against them. And I think that's probably the biggest thing he can do on crime, because if he can make impact on our urban cities and our urban areas, and I think that will give things for people to run on. I have a question about whether people will be able to win in our urban areas as Republicans, but I think that will encourage moderate Democrats, law enforcement Democrats to run. The problem is still going to be money. The money to get the money, financial support to run on a statewide campaign or an urban area campaign, you're going to have to say certain things that checks the boxes, and one of those right now is soft on crime. So it's until we get that fixed, it's still going to be difficult. But I'll say this: in the last election, or after the last election in November, there's only one George Soros DA still in office in the state of California. Really? Every other one was defeated or removed.
Good.
Good sign.
Good.
Yeah.
I got a question. So there's two questions, because what your answer was very good. So one, Trump, declared gangs and cartels terrorist groups, so it opens up resources. So my first part of this question is, what are those resources? Are we going to have tanks moving through the inner cities? And my second part of this question is, you said the keywords are going to be soft on crime. Mm-hmm. What needs to happen before these inner cities or these left-leaning cities wake up and be like, we need to be hard on crime? Like, does purge night need to take place, or like? No.
Well, the first thing is we're not going to have tanks go into our urban areas. What we're going to have is resources, which opens up for the federal government to pursue charges. I mean, it's like the federal government is the last bastion when the local government won't take care of crime or address crime. I mean, we've seen that in Harris County here in Texas. Then the feds come in and file charges. And the good thing about the feds is there's much more people you're more likely to be held instead of released pretrial. And when you have a conviction in the federal government system, it's day for day. Like in Texas, if you get a conviction, you get credit for 4 days for every day you're in jail or you're in prison. So it's day for day in the federal system. So it's much more, it has much more consequences, and I mean, they're long-term. And so, and the criminals know that. So I think opening those resources, open them up for more federal prosecution of crime is what we're talking about. And on the other issue, remind me what the other issue was.
You said
what's it going to take for get them to wake up?
Yeah.
The problem, here's the problem we have right now is, who do you believe? I mean,
let's
you've
just
got
say
a well-oiled machine on the left where they identify soft on crime candidates. And so they've got one group that identifies them, gives them money, gets them elected in Democrat strongholds. Then they got the second group that invites them to seminars that says, we got you elected, quid pro quo, here's all the things you're going to do. You're no longer going to seek enhancements. You're no longer going to seek long sentences. It goes on and on and on. And then they have a third group that does these stupid pseudoscience studies that releases studies saying, oh, if you do X, Y, Z, it won't increase crime. And then the fourth and final group is PR firms, press releases that they release, and we have evidence of multiple ones of these defendants, DAs releasing the same press release saying on how to sell these new policies to their voters. We got to figure out a way to either respond to that or go back to who's the most accurate on crime statistics. Law enforcement always has been, but now we're in this period of time where their response is, oh, you can't believe that. That's law enforcement. Yeah, they're the most accurate.
Well, they were demonized. Yeah. It's just hard to believe, because I mean, like, what was it? Maybe a few months ago, they were setting people on fire in the subway. Like I said, like, what needs to happen for people to wake up and realize this? And and what needs to be looked at. I just feel like, I don't know, just look at like what's going on around you, that you can't wait for a subway because you'll either be pushed in front of a moving train or set on fire.
Well, here's the problem. In our politics, we always try to find compromise. But the
Instead of
problem
just
with criminal justice reform, bail reform, there is no compromise with these groups when they lie and they release these crappy pseudoscience studies that are based on junk, or the common sense thing that says, oh, if you spend time in jail, that's going to hurt your chances of getting a job. That's absolutely a true statement. Don't commit crime. I mean, it's just silly. I mean, grandma, if she commits a crime and that's going to hurt her relationship with her granddaughter. Absolutely true statement. But the problem is there's consequences when an individual commits a crime. And we want to get rid of this. They want to get rid of this individualized basis for the criminal justice system where we, like Skaggs, what, you're a first time offender. So we want to give you the punishment that you need to turn around and become productive. And the next time you come, then you need more punishment because the first time didn't work. We want to get rid of all that in these crazy reforms and treat everybody cookie cutter the same, like they're a first time offender. Shock of all shocks, they're being seen as a green light to commit more crime, because when you no longer seek enhancements against drug dealers, then you only charge them with possession of drugs, which is a 2-week sentence, instead of possession of 30 pounds of meth, which is a 20-year sentence. And shock of all shock, they think of 2 weeks in jail as a cost of doing business. Green light to commit more crime. We know that. They know it. We have to go back to what works, and that's what we're doing.
Question for you in terms of the statistics and the junk science behind it. I remember from back when I took a sociology class, I was taught by a police officer, New York City, former New York City police officer, and he was talking about how as crime becomes normalized, people stop reporting it in general, so it doesn't get recorded and numbers go down, and then people can run on like, look, you see, under my leadership, crime actually went down. So there's that kind of background aspect of crime and statistics in general, I feel. But then you have what the FBI did the past couple of years, which was on top of that, underreported even more. We just saw last week, our entire episode was complaining about how the FBI seems to be playing funny games around the Jeffrey Epstein case and releasing the files. How are we expected to trust any statistics that come out of the FBI the next couple of years, especially if you're using the rationale that, look, Trump is coming back in now, we are going to start counting things correctly. I could see them turning around and being like, look, since Trump's president, all the numbers are going up now. It's his fault that crime is going back up. Well, a lie by omission where they don't tell you, well, yeah, you fudged the numbers before that. The number was low.
The numbers were already high. Yeah.
So now we're just telling the truth. The numbers went up. What do you think the odds are of something like that happening?
I think it's pretty high. You've already seen
100%.
Yeah, 100%. You've already seen the press come out and start attacking that our economy's showing a lot of weakness. Whereas if we'd had a Republican in office for the last 2 years, they would have said we were already in a recession. And look at the way that the jobs numbers has been downgraded. I mean, it's like all the jobs for the last year in the election, running up to the election, were downgraded. And a lot of them were it's like almost all the jobs created last year were government jobs, shock of all shocks,
right.
Nothing in the private sector. And almost all jobs went to foreigners. So it was, we already have this manipulation. And I think, one of the things that you mentioned is people aren't reporting. Well, one of the ways we manipulated crime for the last few years is we were downgrading. We were changing felonies to misdemeanors. And then we were saying, oh, look, crime's down because we don't have as many felonies. Well, you change felonies to misdemeanors. And so you've been seeing a lot of that going on for a while. And again, I think the backlash of that is just now forming because we know what works and we're going back to that and we're getting real results. I mean, look at the results of the immigration. I think immigration and law enforcement are so intertwined because they have the same politics.
Yeah.
Trump's been in office 6 weeks and the border's been shut down. So we could have done this at any time in 6 weeks. And Biden was telling people that, the only reason why we didn't do it is because of it was impossible, or because this bipartisan bill didn't get passed, which they're still lying about. That bipartisan bill would have prevented Trump from doing what he's done in the last 6 weeks. So it wasn't an intent. I mean, it wasn't an attempt to solve the issue. It was an attempt to prevent Trump from doing it. Going forward, though, I think we're going to see more of this. Returning to what works. I mean, since I've talked to y'all, I've done a lot of debates, and I've done talks on this issue. I did a debate with one of the national law firms that's filing these lawsuits all over the country about criminal justice reform. And the girl that I debated against, she was calling jails cages. And she was just, I mean, when she couldn't respond to my argument, she'd just call me racist. But she was
shocking.
I know. She was making this argument about the reality is that crime is going down. It's not going up. Just look at the FBI statistics. And so, I mean, I started looking at that issue after that. And so, like in October before the election, I wrote an article that was published in the Attorney at Law magazine about why we should be questioning the FBI statistics. And I set out like 4 or 5 reasons why, because it was a new system. They had rolled it out. You have to get new equipment to report to it. And so the reporting was not complete. We had the 2 largest police forces not even reporting to it because they didn't have the new equipment. And what do you know? 10 days after my article was published, the FBI, it was discovered, changed their statistics, and suddenly crime was up. It's still incomplete, but right. I mean, I thought that was my biggest indication they thought Trump was going to win, because they didn't want to have to change the statistics after a Trump win. So they did it 3 weeks before the election. And I'm like, oh, this tells me that the FBI thinks Trump's going to win.
That's interesting.
But then that blew a hole completely in all their arguments, because all of their arguments ended with, look at the FBI statistics. They show crime is down. It's not up. Well, we destroyed that argument overnight. And so what happened? One of these groups released a study within a week saying, well, it's not criminal justice reform. It's not bail reform that's causing crime to increase. And it's like, you can't trust anything these people say. There's no compromise with them. You can just get rid of them. And we have to go back to what we know works. And then the party will moderate and come back to a law and order party, which is historically what both parties have been.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think you're right. I'm not like personally invested or tied to the Democrat Party doing well and winning in the future, but it's a good point. How likely is it that anyone from
but our country needs two parties arguing the issues and forcing both to moderate. I mean, the worst thing we had is getting rid of the filibuster on certain issues, because that gets rid of moderation. So we need more moderation. Yeah,
that making talking it out behind closed doors and whatnot. Yeah, I see what you mean. That's a good point. Like, it'll force a Democrat to just be a little bit more sane. Like, a Democrat's still going to win, right? But maybe some more Mayor Adamses will win somewhere. Yeah. And we were talking a little bit last week about El Salvador, and I find it just like such an interesting example of how it can be done, where President Bukele there has like completely turned around the ship, like from the absolute worst scenario you could possibly be in to the safest place in South America. I don't foresee how anyone can run to the left of that again, at least in the short term. And by short term, I mean like the next 50 years in El Salvador.
But they'll try.
but think of it that way. You just went from pure cartel gang run country to now it's safe and it's great. Everyone's still alive. Are they going to be like, well, we actually kind of want to go back to the insanity? I just don't think so with the approval ratings that the guy has down there. Even when his term's up, I'm saying.
But what's the left arguing right now? I mean, they really want to go back to the insanity. They want to go back to the USA. They want to go back to, I mean, really, you want to go back to the payoffs. I mean, I've been saying for a time, I mean, with all the cartels and bringing in drugs in the country, what policies would they be doing differently if they were in the pockets of these cartels? And I'm like, it's really hard to figure out anything they'd be doing different than they were doing. And so I think you can have a very fine, a very clear contrast right now. And I think that's going to become, and I think what's scaring the Democrats and I don't mean to be harping on the Democrats, but
harp on them.
Yeah, what you should do.
Really scaring the crap out of the soft on crime people is they know it's going to work. And then the contrast will be so stark in the next election. And then, what's the biggest campaign ad that's going to defeat them next time is how can you ever trust a moderate on their side ever again? Biden ran as a moderate.
Right. Yeah.
He promised
that's a good idea.
He was going to bring back sanity. And what did he do? I mean, it was almost like the party had all the goods on him and they only kept quiet because he let them run amok on the left. I mean, he ran.
Yeah, he was the ultimate yes man.
Policies. Yeah. So how do you ever trust a moderate Democrat again?
Yeah, I think that's a valid criticism, and it's actually something a good way to run. Like, for as much as Biden, portrayed himself. I know you mentioned before Bernie Sanders wouldn't have won and all that. That's why they had to go with a more centrist person. But they are running everyone as a centrist, and then they end up governing like a chaos-driven maniac who wants a country to implode in on itself. So it actually, I feel
every step of the way, it's a lie. I was going to say this before when you were saying maybe we'll see more, moderate Democrats like Adams run, but I wanted to be like, or they're just going to run on the story of being moderate. And the second they get in, bail reform.
I could also see people make the argument that, it wasn't real communism we tried, right?
Yeah, now we're going to do. Yeah,
you're saying like Biden wasn't actually a progressive; he was a centrist who ran. That's why
what's going to be difficult is they're not going to have the funding to do these riots or protests, and so that's going to be the real problem in 2 years because they want to go back to the tried and true method of 6 months before an election, take some scandal, turn it into a race thing, and have all these protests. Well, now they don't have the money to fund those protests. How are they going to do that even if they want to?
It's also going to be hard to, see more money in your bank account, see less crime on the streets, see things get better, see this idea of a utopia start to unfold. And then just immediately, if you're not totally brainwashed, just go back to supporting piss poor policies because it's Team Blue. Huzzah!
Well, it's going to be.
I think it's going to be hard
next year because the layoffs, the firing at the federal government level, those are all jobs that are, they are monitored. So we're going to have a decrease in the number of the workforce because we have a whole bunch of people that just got fired. They need to be fired, but that's going to say our workforce is contracting. And so the media is going to portray that as we're heading into a recession. And I look at Argentina where they just have gone through something like this and they went through, essentially what Trump is doing is the Argentina model, and you could say Argentina is just following a tried and true method that someone else has done, but he's trying to get it done quickly so that we can get through the ramifications before the next election.
Yeah, speaking of, I've seen Javier Milei talk about that even though he is very much so, like right-wing anarchist type, anarcho-capitalist type, even he has said, well, I do have to kind of do this somewhat gradually, because if I were to just fire everyone on day one, the Peronists there, like the left-wing party, would immediately just harp on that every single day in the news. So he's like, it's a gradual process of us shrinking.
But what he considers gradual are
it's still radical.
Portray as radical.
It is still it is radical given the status quo for the past 100 years of progressivism.
It's Trump derangement syndrome, global. It's Milei derangement syndrome.
But you know what? I don't think it's derangement. They know they're just they've got their talking points. Look tonight, the president's speaking to a joint session of Congress, and how many senators did a press release where they put little clips of them all on X, and it's like 22 of them had the exact same. They get their marching orders.
Project Mockingbird.
Who thought that was a good idea, though?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't think that one's going to work. Everyone sniffed that out immediately and started pointing it out, which I think is things are a little bit different now. I think kind of that something like that would have worked maybe a couple of years ago.
5 years ago, yeah.
Oh, yeah. 5 years ago, absolutely. But it's like Trump has kind of entered his Reagan phase, and y'all probably aren't old enough to remember Reagan, and God bless you. I hate you.
88 and 89
But,
over here.
You know,
Yeah.
he was considered. I know 88, 89. I graduated law school in 89, but Reagan was considered a Teflon president. That there was nothing that they could blame him for that would stick because he was trusted so much by the public. And I think Trump is entering his Teflon period. The problem is he can overplay it, and I'm not even going to say overplay it. He can do so much that the public can get fatigue, Trump fatigue, and scared. Right now, the public is thinking, I trust Trump. I think Trump has a plan. Everybody's worried about the war and what's he's doing by suspending war funding for Zelensky. And I've heard so many people say, I trust that Trump has a plan, and I believe that. I mean, in Texas, there's going to be a lot of that, but it wouldn't take too many stories of bad news to be overplayed for people to get scared. And so there's going to be dark days ahead.
One good scary event will really test the resolve of a lot of people.
Also, people's patience will run thin, right? Like even me, who I voted for Trump, trying to give him the benefit of the doubt throughout the first couple of weeks here, right? I'm trying to be fair and objective on every single thing, but I voted for you so that you do deliver the goods, right? At some point or another. And if I keep seeing more things like I saw last week with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, I'm going to start losing confidence in you. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go and support some leftist state person, right? But I could see myself just be,
But Trump has learned.
I agree with you, Skaggs.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Trump has learned from his first term. I mean, the worst criticism of Trump in his first term was that he was playing a part that he wasn't comfortable with, and that was he was playing a politician. He is much more comfortable. He seems to be in charge. He doesn't seem to lose his temper and fly off the handle with his midnight tweets. And I think part of it is he's just working all the time. I mean, he's doing all these executive orders. And so I think they're keeping him busy because he's always been known to only need 4 or 5 hours sleep a night.
He's always working.
I don't know how he does it, man.
I mean, that's so he has to have a very high metabolism. I know he doesn't look like he does, but that is not good for your body to be doing that. So he has to.
That and 3 gallons of Diet Coke a day.
I know. Who else has a little button on their desk to say, push Diet Coke, Diet Coke?
I drink 1 can of Diet Coke. I feel like dying.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
I'm very jealous. I used to drink 7 a day or more.
No.
I would have clients that would pick me up.
I don't understand the addiction.
But in the last 2 years, I mean, this is my second year. I've only had 1 Diet Coke the whole time in the last year and a half, 2 years.
I drink water. I don't know. Water and bourbon. That's it. That's it. That's all I drink. That's all I drink.
We were just talking about
a touch of bourbon.
Bourbon prices might be coming down with Canada not buying any bourbon anymore.
Yeah,
the supply will go up in the
well, and I think the public is going to get nervous about these. With Canada and Mexico and trade wars that they're
I'm so tired of hearing that because the answer is just simply buy American. You know what I mean?
I also think it's going to be
okay. We won't have top shelf guacamole anymore, but we'll live.
The reason why Mexico and Canada are reacting the way they are is they know what his ultimate goal is to move these businesses back to the United States.
Sure, and I also think they're reacting the way they are because they know the deal. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be imperative on Trump and the administration to explain this clearly to the American people. Just like he said to Zelensky the other day, you don't have the cards. We have the cards, right? Explain to everyone we have.
Okay, but never take what Trump says at face value. I mean, that's probably the biggest mistake of the press. And I'm not saying that they even that's not the way they believe, but they're always taking everything he says at face value because we have this tabloid journalism and they're trying to get as many clicks as they can.
Like the bleach joke.
Trump always is 3 steps ahead. And so whenever he's saying, oh, we're going to own, part of, Beirut, we're going to make that, or not Beirut, but, that part of Israel, and we're going to make that into a resort.
Oh, Gaza.
Yeah, Gaza. That was never what he wanted to do. That was just to get people to negotiate. And
that's a good example of what I was talking about before. Like, I don't like that plan whatsoever. However,
I don't either, but
I am willing to be like, all right, I'm going to give Trump some time here because he's cooking on something, perhaps,
Yeah.
that I don't know about because I'm not sitting there at the table.
But I think everything he does is that way. When he's saying all these, I mean, he's got a compromise in mind. He's willing to compromise for something, and he knows what the long-term effect of tariff wars are. So he's got to compromise, and you know, he's the type of person. He's a pure businessman. I mean, he would be just as likely to declare victory and put his tail between his legs and backtrack, but declare victory, because that's just Trump. I mean,
right? He's on every side.
Never admit you lose. Yeah.
But the point is, I think he's always looking after the best interest of the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's my perception of him. I don't see any other reason for him to be doing what he's doing after what he's gone through. And I don't have that perception of the Democrat Party or Biden or even Harris at this point. And
or Newsom or Hillary or anybody.
Going forward, I can't trust any of them.
Yeah, I do have one. I know we're coming close to the end here. And so we've been talking about bail reform and the FBI and crime and all this stuff. What do you feel? What's your opinion on good old Kash Patel?
Kash Patel,
the new director of the FBI.
Yeah, I know who.
I'm sorry. I know we're changing gears here. I don't mean to throw you off. But
I think Kash Patel is a throwback to a person who stands up for what he believes. You know, there was a sheriff who got sued for, you know, this bail reform stuff, and he was in Arizona, in this little podunk county. He couldn't even afford, but he was a former Marine. And so he's like, I'm not settling with you guys, and I'm not settling because that's not right. I'm going to do what I think is right. And so he gets the state attorney general involved, and they have to go through this whole thing for 4 years. They have to live under a preliminary injunction that's just horrendous and doesn't work and is a green light to commit more crime. And then they win the election, and they go back and reinstitute accountability. People learn what if they don't do what they're supposed to say they're going to do. There's consequences. I think that's Kash Patel in a nutshell. He's going to do what he thinks is right, and he was the person that looked at all this and said they're just making this up on Trump. Mm-hmm. And he's going to. I trust him, and I trust Trump that he's looking after, and I think he's the best person there to reform the FBI, and I think the FBI needs great reforms.
Oh yeah.
After what we just talked about, yeah, of course.
Sure. Well, I don't want any other Republican or Democrat. I don't want the FBI to wake up.
You just want a good guy
Captain has pissed us off, or he's pissed off somebody in our party of donors, so we're now targeting him. Mm. We can't have that happen again. Now, I know politics is always in there. The FBI has a terrible history. That's why we have to put good leaders there. And I think Kash Patel falls on the side of good leaders.
Okay,
fair enough. Sounds
like that. Let me ask you: do you have any concerns whatsoever about the plan with the cartels? From my point of view, I do. Obviously, I'm not on the side of the cartels. I don't like what the cartels are doing, that they're bringing fentanyl in, that they're facilitating mass migration and all these terrible things that they're doing. But I'm weary of war, and especially the terror wars, which haven't really gone great in our direction the past 20 years.
We've been winning the war on terror.
While Trump is, I think what Trump's trying to do and wrap up some wars that we're in and get them over with is great. I'm weary of them perhaps creating another war somewhere else. Are you concerned at all the cartel's capability to get us bogged down into some sort of insurgency, trying to get rid of them if we are treating them like we have treated terrorist organizations in the Middle East?
You know, I'm very concerned about the cartels, but the problem with the cartels is they're not a problem in another country. They're already here because of our open border policies and because of decriminalization of marijuana in some states. The cartels they're no longer laundering their money in the United States only. They're bringing their operations into the United States. Anywhere there's federal land that's kind of isolated, they'll bring in, they'll start growing marijuana because what's the risk? They've decriminalized it. So what are they going to do? Are they just going to deport them if they're here illegally? And because of this period of open borders, they can bring in as many workers as they want. And it's not just the Mexican cartel doing this. It's the Chinese cartel, the Russian cartel. They're already here. And so we have plenty of fertile ground operating in the United States. The problem we've got is Mexico is our southern border.
Mhm.
And, I read an article just recently saying that Mexico is a failed state because it's really been turned over to the cartels. And I don't know how we deal with that, but we will have to deal with our neighbor who the government is under the control of the cartels. And I don't know how we do that. But I trust.
There's
Biden.
one tried and true method.
I don't trust Biden to do it because he ignored it for 4 years. I trust Trump to do a better job. Look at what's the Mexican government's response to it right now. They're suing gun manufacturers in the United States, blaming all of their woes on gun manufacturers. And the guns that we're talking about that the cartels are getting are not guns that
they're
are
Russian
available or for purchase in gun shops in the United States. And so that case, I think the U.S. Supreme Court just accepted that case to hear argument. And so I think it's still going to be the scapegoat.
I did think that was so damn preposterous, right? Like, you're going to go after the gun manufacturers in the United States, the industry that makes us the tools that would be able to have normal citizens defend themselves from the cartels. Is what the Mexican government chooses to go after. Like,
but isn't that
is that an accident, or
isn't that the liberal, progressive policy right now? Is to sue you for their own the problems they've created? I mean, I don't.
Well, the next time a drunk driver hits you, you sue Ford. Yeah.
Oh yeah, or the drunk driver sues you, and sues Ford. I mean,
or Miller Lite. Yeah.
I mean, the problem we have is we've just come out of this period where the people that were the victims were suing, or not the victims, the racial victims were suing and getting large settlements. But, someone called me one time and said, well, I want to sue. And I said, here's the problem. You're suing on the conservative side of the issue. And these lawsuits have been on the progressive side of the issue, where two like-minded people are on the same, opposite sides of the same case. So it's in the county, or it's in the city, or it's in the state's benefit to have a press release saying, we have settled this case because the police were acting so terribly. When it's a conservative thing, there's no such coalition between the two parties in the lawsuit. That'll never happen. So you're in those lawsuits, you've had settlements, which is really just giving money to progressive causes when they shouldn't have. And I'm hoping that will come to an end, but I don't know the next time we have a Democrat in office, how we stop it from happening again.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What do you think about, speaking of that, I know this is so far away, but his stock has really risen in my regard, at least the past couple weeks. J.D. Vance. What do you think about him and the future? Do you think he could be a possible future candidate after Trump?
Vance?
Yeah.
Look, I think Vance, absolutely, 100% yes. Vance's stock has done nothing but go up until the Zelensky thing. And even then, I think his stock has gone up. But
I think it's gone up.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it.
When he did the debate with the
Tim Walz.
Waltz for with the vice presidential debate, he did such a good job. I mean, he didn't just hit a home run. He hit a grand slam home run behind his back, whatever you want. I mean, I call it a double field goal. Like, people make fun of me for making that stupid comment, but I think it's the equivalent of a double field goal. That's how great a job he did. And it caused people to give Trump a second look. I think Vance is Trump, a younger version and a smarter version. I think Trump is probably more street smart, and he probably is thinking ahead on the chess game. But Vance is super intelligent. He comes across well. He can state all those policies better than Trump to the public. The problem that I saw with him with the Zelensky thing, and I agree with you, completely loved it. Supportive of it, and he was defending Trump. So, but there's been a couple of podcasts that have said that he intentionally threw a little bomb in there because he didn't like Zelensky. And when you go back and listen to it, you kind of agree with that. It's just I don't disagree with that needing to be done. And I just, if the election was today, he would be the next president, and it wouldn't even be close.
Yeah, I think definitely he's rising in that regard. Yeah, looking back at that conversation, I mean, you probably do a whole episode on that conversation between the three of them. One of the things I picked out of it is it seemed like Trump just let J.D. Vance cook right there. He just sat back and let him talk.
Well,
Like,
but he played
the special thing.
He played the elder statesman. Whoever thought
Yeah.
Trump could do that? He never did that in the first term in
Yeah.
office.
Well, that's how he keeps everybody on the back foot. The thing with J.D. Vance is, you know, I'm not comparing him to Dave Smith, but, you know, Dave Smith explains things, you know, part of the Problem podcast. He explains things very well and very intelligently. Also, like our good buddy, Professor Nick Giordano. And when J.D. Vance starts to cook and go after somebody, he is pretty articulate in the way he does it. And he has bullet points and he has proof and he has it all at the tip of his tongue and right there in his head. And I think that will crush any politician that is looking to just get ahead in life by being a politician. Any politician that's looking to play the game is always going to get crushed by somebody like him.
Well, he's so smart. I mean, look at the job he did. I mean, you know, when you're a Republican right now, you're not debating just your opponent. You're having to debate the moderator. And they tried to set him up. And he was so well prepared, so knowledgeable that they could not do it. And he turned it around on them and kind of did a dunk on them. And they couldn't even call him a liar after the fact. So that's how well he did. And so, I mean, you can see Trump even not trying to get ahead of it. He's saying, well, we'll see who I will, you know, be supporting as vice.
Yeah, he didn't want to.
It's going to be Vance. It's absolutely going to be Vance. But he's trying to keep the Florida governor, because he's term limited too. It's, you know, running for president, it's his natural or his next step. And there were so many people like in Texas that said, you know, I like the Florida governor, but I just feel like Trump was cheated out of a second term. And that's where I was. I was like, I will crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump. And then, you know, DeSantis can be next. Well, I think
DeSantis. Vance. No, I think DeSantis lost all his opportunities. He's a wet blanket.
He might have burned some bridges with his run last time. We'll see. Remains to be seen.
You know what's
time?
It'll be between Vance and DeSantis, and DeSantis probably will make a deal with him where he'll have some place in the administration. And so DeSantis' next step will be administrative position, support Vance for 8 years, and then him run. If they set up a dynasty, I mean, you know, the problem we've got right now with this criminal justice reform, bail reform, the Democrats have really painted themselves into a corner. They can't compromise, but they also are proven liars. And so going forward, how do you trust them? And how do they moderate without alienating? I mean, they've got a real risk of a third party, because the true believers are going to not change their mind. And if they have anyone throwing money their way, they'll split away from the party. Then it's going to be, you know, we had a period, again, y'all are too young to remember this. I hate y'all for this, but there was a period where the Democrats couldn't win a national election. They could win, you know, regional, they could win state elections, but they couldn't win a national election. I'm hopeful, depending on, you know, the Republicans, whether they doom themselves, but I think we're going into a period where if things go like I hope they will, that we're going to go into a period where the Democrats can't win a national election for multiple reasons, including they can't be trusted.
Yeah, I think one of the most solid ways out of this, and I hate to even say it because it's just going to create new swamp monsters on the other side, and we'll fight this battle again. The only way out of this is years and years of just MAGA for, you know, America first,
good rule
politicians. Yeah.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be ironic, right? Given that I feel like we just came out off the precipice of it was possible that if, you know, Kamala won, I felt like there was a chance that we, you know, Republicans might literally never win again.
No.
Well, right? So or that they would compromise in ways that would doom them to the desert for a longer period of time.
And it might actually end up being the complete opposite. So I mean,
Because I remember a
will
time
tell.
where the Democrat and Republican Party, you really couldn't tell much of a difference on them on the national
Yeah.
issues. They were just
Oh, yeah.
shades of the same color. That is absolutely not true right now.
Mm.
But if the Republicans had lost, there would have been a big push within the Republican Party to compromise and be more
Sure.
like the
I
Democrats.
actually think that, right, to be honest with you, it's still not that different. If you watched the primaries, the GOP primaries, Trump didn't participate in the debates, but a lot of them are still that old guard where it was like there wasn't not much of a difference between, let's say, like a Bush and a Al Gore or something like that on certain things. Like Trump is different. You give him that. Whether you love him or you hate him or not.
Well, but I would say he's more than different. There is no other person on the face of the planet that could have withstood what Trump endured and still got elected president of the United States for a second term.
Mhm.
I mean, every other candidate would have withdrawn from the race and would have been chased out by the party elites. I think they would have liked to have chased him out of it, but he was self-funded if he needed to be, so they weren't going to chase him out. And so I think that was a big difference. And I think that will continue. I mean, he will be a lesson. Someone made this comment, and I agree with it. For the rest of y'all's lives and my life, we're going to be seeing movies about the 2024 election and what's happened since 2016.
How is it portrayed,
and
though?
how
Yeah.
Trump was. I mean, I can already see a movie where it's all it is about him running for re-election the second time and winning, and in the closing credits are just highlights of all these executive orders that he signed. I mean, that could just be one movie right there. And we're going to be watching movies and studying this campaign for the rest of my life, especially. Y'all are so young. We may go into some other parts.
He definitely ran one of the greatest campaigns in
I
the
agree with
history
that.
of America.
Yeah. Campaign.
Well, but also I think it was the backlash from the, we have been gaslighted for too long. And, like this story I'm telling you about the cartels before the election, I did a podcast about it, and I was fixing to release it. And so I posted a story about it. I was just posting, the guy that was our guest had done an article about it. So I posted on Facebook, immediately got deleted. And I'm like, that doesn't happen these days. And so I reposted, immediately got deleted. So I thought that I was wrong on the issue because I wasn't hearing it anywhere. But what I concluded was it was being censored, because then the next thing you hear is Trump starts raising it in the campaign, and then the backlash from the press. I mean, can you imagine somebody in 2024 saying, "Oh, well, it's just a few dozen apartment complexes that the
another JD Vance
cartels-"
slam dunk."
I know, and I'm like, really? I mean, and so I think that the truth has been suppressed for so long that I think the backlash is going to be greater than it would have been, and Trump is going to become a greater president than he would have if he would have just gotten reelected in 2020.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's the greatest move that ever happened. Yeah.
So their manipulation is going to be the stupidest move, political move.
Yeah, it was perhaps 4 years of overplaying their hand too much. And I know maybe you probably would disagree with this, but radicalizing everybody to a certain extent. Maybe you wouldn't consider it radicalizing, but I consider it radical. Comparing it to the status quo of the past, bunch of years. But that wouldn't have probably happened had we not have 4 years of everything Joe Biden just did, from the border to the COVID
was
stuff.
a direct result of the cover-ups and we were gaslighting everybody. And so you get to the point where you have to do more and more. And so this gaslighting got worse and worse because they were lying about so much. I mean, just look at, we can't close the border. Trump's done it in 6 weeks. Right. I mean, really? What else can we do in a month? What else can we do in a 6-month period that they say could not be done? Can we be safe again? Absolutely. And we just have to go back to what we know works.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I think a demoralization can set in on society too, where there's nothing we can do. That's just the way it is. And then all it takes is somebody to come along and be like, no, actually we can.
But
And
then
we
you go
will.
back to one of your first questions. What's the intent behind this? Why would they be doing that? And I'm kind of if you want to give them an evil intent again, is it just all about being in charge, being in control? That's the politics that it takes for them to win elections at this point. And so now they've stretched it so far that they no longer can win. I mean, I think part of it, you could say they just want to be in power. And so that's what it took to be in power. And now it doesn't work anymore. So now they're going to have to find a new coalition.
Way. Yeah, could be. Definitely. All right, Ken. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for coming on. Why don't you shout out again? Where can people find you and all that good stuff?
Well, if people want to find more about our organization, they can go to pbtx.com, which is the Professional Bondsmen of Texas.com. We have a blog where we highlight criminal justice stories, bail reform stories. We also have our own podcast, which is called The Bail Post. All we do is talk about criminal justice reforms that work, reforms that don't work. And you can find that on our menu, or you can just go to thebailpost.com.
There we go. Thank you so much, Ken. All right, Doom Nation, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We will be back next week with more political news. I'm sure something crazy is happening right now with this impromptu State of the Union address that Trump's got going on. Skaggs and I just reviewed some beer from Australia, so go check that out.
It's coming out tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to change your name from Doom Nation to Revived Nation.
I know.
Well,
right?
yeah, you know,
a long time ago,
when we started this podcast, we were doomed. So, you know,
it rolls off the tongue too good, though. I think we'll just leave it as is.
Yeah.
You've spent all this money to, get it all out there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ken, thank you for coming on. We would love to have you back on. I'm sure we will, because this is an ongoing issue. And who knows, maybe in 2 years or a year from now, you know, crime will be down so low and all this bail, all this criminal justice reform worked, and we'll be in a safer place than we were yesterday.
We could review exactly what did work.
Or it'll be, or we'll be comparing where crime is going down and where it's still up in our urban areas. They're still.
You mean our blue states?
Yeah.
In the blue states. Yeah.
Hopefully they'll learn. I mean, they'll learn. They'll eventually learn, and they'll moderate. We just need them. Our public safety needs it sooner rather than later.
Agreed.
Exactly. All right, Doom Nation. Thank you guys. As always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe.